What up? Welcome back. It is Bones. And in this one, we're going to do just a little bit of gloating here, a little bit of a victory lap. Now, as a lot of people know, they recently had a Battle of the Batman hosted by Big Bad Toy Store. This is where all collectors and fans could vote on which McFarlane Batman they thought was numero uno. And although I did have interest in this, I didn't follow it exactly as much as a lot of people did, but it was on my radar and I knew that it was going on. Now, at first, I thought definitely going to have a 50-50 chance that it's going to be either Hush Batman or Nightfall Batman. So that was a given. I pretty much knew that. Now, if you don't know, I've been a big time supporter of Hush Batman. Can't really put my finger on it, but he is by far my favorite Batman from McFarlane, except for Grim Knight. But when you're talking about standard comic book versions of Batman, I really prefer the big stature and hulking presence of Hush Batman. Now, as we went along in the contest, I kind of started leaning more towards it. It was going to be Nightfall Batman. I don't know what it was. I just had a feeling like people were more inclined to like that sleeker, slightly more posable version of Batman. But in the end, my initial gut feeling that Hush Batman is the best was eventually proven true. The fans have spoken, and Hush Batman did come out on top, although I would have to think it was slightly, you know, just barely came out on top above Nightfall Batman. And as you can see here, I have an array of Hush Batman. I was that guy, the one that bought five Hush Batman when they were released. Now he is a pretty hard figure to come by. He does ask for a really elevated price on the secondary market. And although Nightfall Batman is still relatively easy to get, I even think the black version is harder to get than the blue version. It is not going to compare to the blue Hush Batman, whose black version, although I was never really a big fan of, it started growing on me, and I noticed that a lot of these Hush Batmans, once you add a couple of things like extra articulation, added hands, they can be some of the very best McFarlane figures released. Now, I'd have to say the biggest controversy or sticking point about this was, of course, the scale, because Hush Batman just seems to be taller than everybody else. Now, that's kind of true to the comics. Not exactly. He should not be taller than Martian Manhunter, but he is definitely taller than your average characters. Basically, the same height as Superman. So, one grain of salt that you do have to take this with is that it all comes down how you pose this Hush Batman, who you display him with. Of course, in my book, that definitely has to go to Nightfall Batman. Although with him, I have the reverse problem, and that is that he seems, a little bit shrimpy for me. Doesn't really match well with a lot of the other Batman characters that have been released. It just comes down to that if there was a Batman in between Hush and Nightfall Batman, that would be the ultimate Batman. Not only in scale, but also in articulation and design and execution. Because when you put the two together, you can definitely see how Hush Batman has a slight edge over the complete design and look of him. I'm just talking about how he looks on the shelf. Definitely looks like he just popped out of the pages of a comic book. While the Nightfall Batman, better articulated, better wrist and ankle joints. There's just something about him that doesn't match the presence of Hush Batman. You could even go into the head design because Nightfall Batman does come with that double barbell and you get a little bit more range. While the Hush Batman looks down definitely well, up is a little bit of a battle, but he can still look up adequately. Now, people can say, oh, Hush Batman, that's the old design. But there's still a number of figures being made in the Hush Batman body. If you really enjoy the first appearance Batman as much as I do, you really have to pay your respects to Hush Batman because that is basically the same body mold. Now, here I do have an array of Hush Batman. I do have the first original blue version. Nothing changed, nothing modified. This is how this one will stay in my collection. Wasn't ever really a big fan of the hand choices as well, but you can see the difference the hands make in the next version, which is the black and gray version. Once you change out those hands, just gives them so much more shelf presence and character. I'll give you a tip if you can get Wave Rider on clearance, those hands, as far as size, fit perfectly with your Hush Batman. Then you just have to paint them to get the same color and really takes up the fun factor for these Hush Batman. Now you have my custom Batman here. Now this is made from the 2-pack version with Hush. And the less we speak about that one, the better. Not a big fan of the head sculpt. And then of course we all know about the production where the elbow hinges were the wrong color. But this is my custom version. Now it's pretty interesting. He has the blue Batman head, and I repainted the body and then changed out the trunks for the vampire Batman, added some better fist hands to match his scale, and he is one of my favorite Batmans to go to. Now, when I used that blue head to make this custom, I had a body left over, and I went ahead and made my own unmasked Bruce Wayne. Really cool. Love the way this one came out. That left hand really feels like a belt gripping hand. And he really gives that presence like he's in the Batcave doing some detective work. And finally, you have my yellow oval Batman Hush blue version. This one came along when I had the trunks left over from this black version. So all of these kind of correlated together. So I really wanted to put that yellow oval on him and match the yellow from the belt. Changed out the hands, which once again cannot say enough how that adds to the fun and the posability of this Hush Batman. So really great figure for me. Now, when we get down to it, both of these figures are awesome. You have Hush Batman, pretty large scaled, slightly limited articulation unless you mod him, which gives him more range. And then you have the Nightfall Batman, which many people love, and there's nothing wrong with that. It's just what your preference is, what you prefer, what looks better to you. Because we all have the choice from many different Batman from McFarlane. Now, I tend to lean more towards the black and gray version of Nightfall. Now, there's tons of characters you can add with this Batman, but the main one you want to add is Superman. Now, I know one of the big problems was that Hush Batman is so tall that he dwarfs a lot of the Superman that have been released by McFarlane. Now, recently there's been some taller versions that you can use, but if you try and use the Hush Batman and you don't modify him, he is definitely out of scale with the Hush Batman. He scales a lot better with Nightfall Batman, but I do not have to worry about this because I have my definitive custom Superman. Now, I made him by using as a base body the Vampire Batman. So he pretty much is shoulder to shoulder with Hush Batman. Not sure what's going on here. It looks a little bit slanted, but trust me, when you get them in front of you, they're both pretty much about the same size. Now you can use the Crisis Superman as well, who scales about the same, pretty much head to head with that Hush Batman. And these are taller than your Nightfall Batman, so it just depends what you want to do. Have fun with it. We have tons of choices. Figure photography is always awesome with these figures. And more is becoming one of my favorite parts of collecting. Now, of course, you can't have a Batman display with your classic Dick Grayson Nightwing, and he scales really well with this Hush Batman. And if Damien seems a little bit tall when you get him out of the packaging, he also scales a lot better with the Hush Batman. But it's definitely up to you. There's so many choices that we have. So all in all, in the end, although we are all winners because we have tons of Batman to pick from McFarlane's DC Multiverse, in the end, Hush Batman did come out on top, and we're just gonna have to live with it. But anyways, you guys keep hunting out there, keep collecting, keep customizing, and I will see you on the next one.
They used to call me Crazy Joe, but now they can call me Batman.